This episode is brought to you by CarterComics.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your comic needs, whether it be graded or raw. Carter Comics has got it all. All you gotta do is go to CarterComics.com, fill your card up with all their amazing comics. Use the discount code FREAKNET, FREAKNET. Save you 10% at checkout. Not only on their website, but also at their eBay account. And the link to eBay can be found on their homepage at CarterComics.com. Again, CarterComics.com is your one-stop shop for all comic needs. Greetings, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of this freaky show. It is the month-long celebration of Halloween here on this freaking show on the Freaknet Studios network. I, of course, am your host, Travis C., and with me throughout the month of October, especially this evening,
the Freak Joe.
And guys, as we move along through October, we're going to continue to talk about the spooky and the creepy and the disturbing kind of stuff that we've been talking about. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about serial killers. We've been talking about infamous people or famous people in the history of the world. But I want to dive into a different side of spooky. And I want to focus on haunted and spooky places. So, Joe, a few years back, we did kind of play a similar game where I gave you a location, and I gave you a little history of the location, and you had to tell me if it was a real place or not.
All right.
I did the same thing on Little Geek Lost with Mandy many years ago as well, and it's fun to do. And I figured, why the hell not? Let's just do it again.
Yeah.
So what I have here is I have a list of some haunted, creepy places. So here's our problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember which ones are real and which ones aren't.
Oh no.
Hold on a second. Wait, hold on. That's it. This will be an easy discovery. Just sit here and just enjoy maybe panicking a little. We'll be fine. We're okay. It's cool. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
we're good. Okay, so let me double check. I'll verify one more. There's that, and because now that I look at it, I thought there was one that I had on my list, and now I'm not seeing it. But if you're not, hold on. Just, dude, hold on a second. Chill. Okay. I know which ones are real and which ones aren't. Okay, so Joe, I'm just going to run through them. Here's the thing. They could all be real. They could all be fake. Some could be real. Some could be fake. It's up to you to decide. And here's the thing. I'm not going to tell you on the show.
Oh, okay. I'm going to live with
it. I'm going to leave it up to your imagination. I'll tell you after the show if you'd like to know. But I want the viewers to really try. Like, no Googling, no searching. I want you guys to hear the stories, because either these are documented descriptions or I made them up myself. And either way, I want somebody to be proud of me and be like, oh, dude, those are all real. Or, nah, man, those are all fake, but hey, good job trying. Or half and half. I'm like, I don't know which ones he did, but he crushed it, So we're going to run through them. We'll start at the beginning here real quick. And we're going to start with the first one called, and here's the thing, dude. There's a good possibility you may have heard some of these. You're definitely more well-educated and more known of information than I am. So there's a good chance you'd be like, you know what? I've heard of that place. I know exactly where it is. Yes, that's real. Or it's like, you know what? No, that's not 100% fake, but please let me read the description before you decide.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Raham Hall in Norfolk, United Kingdom. This English country home may be gorgeous, but it also has a dark past. The mysterious brown lady who haunts its halls is rumored to be Lady Dorothy Walpole, who was trapped in an unhappy marriage and later found solace in the arms of a fellow British aristocrat. Story says it was either her estranged husband or the scorned wife of her lover who locked her in her room at Rainham Hall, where she eventually died in 1726. Her ghost, nicknamed for the color of her dress, was reportedly captured on film in December of 1936's edition of Country Life. Guests can visit the home of any of its open days throughout the year.
Hmm.
So, is the Brown Lady truly haunting a location known as Raham Hall in Norfolk, United Kingdom?
I don't know if she's actually haunting it, but I do think it's a real place. It sounds real to me.
Okay. Good. For those who are listening, make your guesses. Don't cheat. Don't Google. The next one we're going to go to is Port Amber. This is in Lax Kwalum, British Columbia. Canada founded Lax Kwalum's Port Amber as a refugee colony in 1919. After arriving from Europe, the refugees endured solitary confinement, hard labor, and both physical and psychological abuse. More than 1,000 of them died before operations ceased in 1934. We imagine any tortured souls would find it hard to rest after all that, and visitors to the site have reported everything from empty rocking chairs moving on their own.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Yeah, this sounds like that could be a real place.
Okay. Okay. For those listening, make your selections. Again, don't Google, don't search, just listen to what's being said out there. Okay. The Chateau de Brisac in Brisac, Quincy, France. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm going to go with it. This 17th century Loire Valley castle incorporates two towers from the medieval castle. Once occupied by Jacques de Berez, the Duke of Brisac, that is replaced. Once occupied, the 17th century Loire Valley, I'm being too fancy now. The 17th century Loire Valley castle incorporates two towers from the medieval castle. Once occupied by Jacques de Berez, the Duke of Brisac. Okay, Duke of Brisac. According to legend, after de Brez caught his wife Charlotte and one of his huntsmen in flagrant delight in the South Tower, he killed them both on the spot. Some visitors have claimed to have seen Charlotte's ghost, nicknamed the Green Lady, for the color of her dress roaming the halls.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds fake. The Two Towers thing's too much like Lord of the Rings.
Okay. I hope you're keeping track of which ones you're saying are real or fake. Okay. The Pittman Hotel in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Not only is this popular Smoky Mountain destination famous for Sam Raimi's 1981 supernatural horror film, it is also its own spooky past. Allegedly, staff members have encountered ghosts, such as the maid from room 109, who is known to unpack away guests' clothes when they aren't looking.
Interesting. It's a weird thing to pick. I think that was made up for the Sam Raimi show.
Okay. Tao Dan Park in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. The gorgeous gardens of Tao Dan Park may look lush and relaxing during the day, but some say the space takes on an entirely different feel at night. That's when, according to urban legend, the ghost of a young man who was killed in an attack still wanders the park, looking for his lost love.
What was the name of the park again?
Tao Dan Park. Tao Dan Park in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam.
Oh man, I have no idea.
Maybe it's Tao Dan. Tao
Yeah.
Dan? Tao Dan Park?
I don't know. I don't speak Vietnamese. Let's say it's real. Yeah, why not?
Okay. Final one. This is the Old Vicarage in Borgvanet, Sweden. This former home of Lutheran vicars is considered one of Sweden's most haunted houses. Over the years, residents and visitors have reported oddities like unexplained footsteps and music, apparitions of a woman dressed in all gray, and a rocking chair that seems to move without any earthly assistance. The old vicarage currently operates as a cafe and an inn, so brave souls can stop for a bite or spend the night.
I'm gonna say real.
Okay, cool. For those of you who are listening, make sure you go ahead and take your guesses. And once you've made your guesses, make your predictions, go ahead and Google these places and you will find out yourself if they are real places or if I made them up. I can tell you right now, going through them, I can't remember myself. I thought I knew.
Yeah, they're all very convincing.
Yeah, yeah, now I can't remember. Or do I? Anyways, yeah, I just it's just always unique when you get to sit there and like kind of learn about haunted places. I know when we started doing like Freaky Cemetery and all that stuff, we were actually talking about the possibility of maybe even checking out haunted buildings and haunted locations and stuff, because obviously Chicago does haunted tours for a reason, because there's a lot of places in Chicago that are considered haunted. So I didn't want to do anything locally because I want to kind of stay away from the possibility of you may have hearing something about it. So again, for those of you who are listening, take your guesses. Once you make your guesses, go ahead and Google, search which ones are real, which ones are fake, and let me know how many you got right. And let me know if I did a good job on the ones that I may or may not have made up.
Mm-hmm.
So, Freak Joe has a pretty lengthy, short story. So we're not going to dwell too much into what we're doing now because I really want to dive into this story. I'm really excited. I'm always excited when I get to hear the Freak Joe tell a story. It's amazing. So before we dive into all that, guys, make sure you are following us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, just by searching This Freakin' Show. You could watch our podcast. You can watch these episodes over on our YouTube channel at Freakin' Studios. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. And while you're over there, and when you finish wrapping up these stories and you're finishing listening to Freak Joe tell his tales, make sure you go check out Freaky Tales as well as Freaky Cemetery, as me and Freak Joe wandered Michigan to find haunted and historic cemeteries in the area. And obviously, yes, you could always listen to us on audio if you prefer, and all you gotta do is search This Freakin' Show wherever you listen to your audio. So, that being said, we're gonna wrap up the show with Freak Joe's next freaky tale.
A Dead Finger by Sabine Baring-Gould. Chapter 1. Why the National Gallery should not attract so many visitors as, say, the British Museum, I cannot explain. The latter does not contain much that, one would suppose, appeals to the interest of the ordinary sightseer. What knows such prehistoric flints and scratched bones, of Assyrian sculpture, of Egyptian hieroglyphs? The Greek and Roman statuary is cold and dead. The paintings in the National Gallery glow with color and are instinct with life. Yet somehow a few listless wanderers saunter yawning through the National Gallery, whereas swarms pour through the halls of the British Museum, and talk and pass remarks about the objects there exposed, of the date and meaning of which they have not the faintest conception. I was thinking of this problem, and endeavoring to unravel it one morning while sitting in the room for English masters at the great collection in Trafalgar Square. At the same time, another thought forced itself upon me. I had been through the rooms devoted to foreign schools, and had then come into that given over to Reynolds, Moreland, Gainsborough, Constable, and Hogarth. The morning had been for a while propitious, but toward noon a dense umber-tinted fog had come on, making it all but impossible to see the pictures, and quite impossible to do them justice. I was tired, and so seated myself on one of the chairs, and fell into the consideration, first of all, of why the National Gallery is not as popular as it should be, and secondly, how it was that the British school had no beginnings like those of Italy and the Netherlands. We can see the art of the painter from its first initiation in the Italian peninsula, and among the Flemings. It starts on its progress like a child, and we can trace every stage of its growth. Not so with English art. It springs to life in full and splendid maturity. Who were there before Reynolds and Gainsborough and Hogarth, the great names of those portrait and subject painters who have left their canvases upon the walls of our country houses were those of foreigners. Holbein, Kneller, Van Dyck, and Lely for portraits, and Manoyer for flower and fruit pieces. Landscapes, figure subjects were all importations, none homegrown. How came that about? Was there no limner that was native? Was that the fashion trampled on homegrown pictorial beginnings as it flouted and spurned native music? Here was food for contemplation. Dreaming in the brown fog, looking through it without seeing its beauties, at Hogarth's painting of Lavinia Fenton as Polly Peachum, without wondering how so indifferent a beauty could have captured the Duke of Bolton and held him for 30 years. I was recalled to myself of my surroundings by the strange conduit of a lady who had seated herself on a chair near me, also discouraged by the fog and awaiting its dispersion. I had not noticed her particularly. At the present moment, I do not remember particularly what she was like. So far as I can recollect, she was middle-aged and was quietly yet well-dressed. It was not her face nor her dress that attracted my attention and disturbed my current thoughts. The effect I speak of was produced by her strange movements and behavior. She had been sitting listless, probably thinking of nothing at all, or nothing in particular, when, in turning her eyes round and finding that she could see nothing of the paintings, she began to study me. This did concern me greatly. A cat may look at the king, but to be contemplated by a lady is a compliment sufficient to please any gentleman. It was not gratified vanity that troubled my thoughts, but the consciousness that my appearance produced, first of all a startled surprise, then undistinguished alarm, and finally indescribable horror. Now a man can sit quietly leaning on the head of his umbrella, and glow internally, warmed and illuminated by the consciousness that he is being surveyed with admiration by a lovely woman, even when he is middle-aged and not fashionably dressed. But no man can maintain his composure when he discovers himself to be an object of aversion and terror. What was it? I passed my hand over my chin and upper lip, thinking it not impossible that I might have forgotten to shave that morning. And in my confusion, not considering that the fog would prevent the lady from discovering neglect in this particular, had it occurred, which it had not. I am a little careless, perhaps, about shaving when in the country, but when in town, never. The next idea that occurred to me was a smut. Had a London black, curdled in this dense pea-soup atmosphere, descended on my nose and blackened it? I hastily drew my silk handkerchief from my pocket, moistened it, and passed it over my nose, and then each cheek. I then turned my eyes into the corners and looked at the lady, to see whether by this means I had gotten rid of what was objectionable in my personal appearance. Then I saw her eyes, dilated with horror, were riveted not on my face, but on my leg. My leg! What on earth could that harmless member have in it so terrifying? The morning had been dull. There had been rain in the night, and I admit that on leaving my hotel I had turned up the bottoms of my trousers. That is a proceeding not so uncommon, not so outrageous as to account for the stony stare of this woman's eyes. If that were all, I would turn my trousers down. Then I saw her shrink from the chair on which she sat to one further removed from me, but still with her eyes fixed on my leg, about the level of my knee. She had let fall her umbrella, and was grasping the seat of her chair with both hands as she backed from me. I need hardly say that I was greatly disturbed in mind and feelings, and forgot all about the origin of the English schools of painters, and the question why the British Museum is more popular than the National Gallery. Thinking that I might have been spattered by a hansom while crossing Oxford Street, I passed my hand down my side hastily with a sense of annoyance, and all at once touched something cold, clammy, that sent a thrill to my heart and made me start and take a step forward. At the same moment, the lady, with a cry of horror, sprang to her feet and with raised hands fled from the room, leaving her umbrella where it had fallen. There were other visitors to the picture gallery beside ourselves, who had been passing through the saloon, and they turned at her cry and looked in surprise after her. The policeman stationed in the room came to me and asked what had happened. I was in such agitation that I hardly knew what to answer. I told him that I could explain what had occurred little better than himself. I had noticed that the lady had worn an odd expression and had behaved in most extraordinary fashion, and that he had best take charge of her umbrella and wait for her return to claim it. This questioning by the officer was vexing, as it prevented me from at once and on the spot investigating the cause of her alarm and mine. Hers is something she must have seen on my leg, and mine at something I had distinctly felt creeping up my leg. The numbing and sickening effect on me of the touch of the object I had not seen was not to be shaken off at once. Indeed, I felt as though my hand were contaminated, and that I could have no rest till I had thoroughly washed the hand, and, if possible, washed away the feeling that had been produced. I looked on the floor. I examined my leg, but saw nothing. As I wore my overcoat, it was probable that in rising from the seat, the skirt had fallen over my trousers and hidden the thing, whatever it was. I therefore hastily removed my overcoat and shook it. Then I looked at my trousers. There was nothing whatever on my leg, and nothing fell from my overcoat when shaken. Accordingly, I reinvested myself, and hastily left the gallery, then took my way as speedily as I could without actually running to Charing Cross Station, and down the narrow way leading to the Metropolitan, where I went into Faulkner's bath and hairdressing establishment, and asked for hot water to thoroughly wash my hand and well soap it. I bathed my hand in water as hot as I could endure it, employed carbolic soap, and then, after having a good brush down, especially on my left side where my hand had encountered the object that had so affected me, I left. I had entertained the intention of going to the Princess's Theatre that evening and of securing a ticket in the morning, but all thought of theatre-going was gone from me. I could not free my heart from the sense of nausea and cold that had been produced by the touch. I went into Gatti's to have lunch and ordered something, I forget what, but when served I found that my appetite was gone. I could eat nothing. The food inspired me with disgust. I thrust it from me untasted, and, after drinking a couple of glasses of claret, left the restaurant and returned to my hotel. Feeling sick and faint, I threw my overcoat over the sofa back and cast myself on my bed. I do not know that there was any particular reason for my doing so, but as I lay, my eyes were on my greatcoat. The density of the fog had passed away, and there was light again, not of first quality, but sufficient for a Londoner to swear by, so that I could see everything in my room, though through a veil darkly. I do not think my mind was occupied in any way. About the only occasions on which, to my knowledge, my mind is actually passive or inert is when crossing the Channel in the foam from Dover to Calais, when I am always, in every weather, abjectly seasick and thoughtless. But as I now lay on my bed, uncomfortable, squeamish without knowing why, I was in the same inactive mental condition. But not for long. I saw something that startled me. First, it appeared to me as if the lappet of my overcoat pocket were in movement, being raised. I did not pay much attention to this, as I supposed that the garment was sliding down onto the seat of the sofa from the back, and that this displacement of gravity had caused the movement I observed. But this, I soon saw, was not the case. That which moved the lappet was something in the pocket that was struggling to get out. I could see now that it was working its way up the inside, and that when it had reached the opening it lost balance and fell down again. I could make this out by the projections and indentations in the cloth. These moved as the creature, or whatever it was, worked its way up the lining. "A mouse," I said, and forgot my seediness. I was interested. "The little rascal! However did he contrive himself to seat himself in my pocket? And I would have worn that overcoat all morning." But no, it was not a mouse. I saw something white poke its way out from under the lappet, and in another moment an object was revealed. Though revealed, I could not understand, nor could I distinguish what it was. Now, roused by curiosity, I raised myself on my elbow, In doing this, I made some noise. The bed creaked. Instantly, the something dropped on the floor, lay outstretched for a moment to recover itself, and then began with the motions of a maggot to run along the floor. There was a caterpillar called the Measurer, because when it advances, it draws its tail up to where its head is, and then throws forward its full length, and again draws up its extremity, forming at each time a loop, and with each step measuring its total length. The object I now saw on the floor was advancing precisely like the measuring caterpillar. It had the color of a cheese maggot, and in length it was about 3.5 inches. It was not, however, like a caterpillar, which is flexible throughout its entire length, but this was, as it seemed to me, jointed in 2 places, one joint being more conspicuous than the other. For some moments I was so completely paralyzed by astonishment that I remained motionless, looking at the thing as it crawled along the carpet, a dull green carpet with darker green, almost black flowers in it. It had, as it seemed to me, a glossy head, distinctly marked, but as the light was not brilliant, I could not make out very clearly, and moreover, the rapid movements prevented close scrutiny. Presently, with a shock still more startling than it produced by its apparition at the opening of the pocket of my greatcoat, I became convinced that what I saw was a finger, a human forefinger, and the glossy head was no other than the nail. This finger did not seem to have been amputated. There was no sign of blood or laceration where the knuckle should be, but the extremity of the finger, or root rather, faded away to indistinctness, and I was unable to make out the root of the finger. I could see no hand, no body behind this finger, nothing whatever except a finger that had little token of warm life in it, no coloration as though blood circulated in it, and this finger was in active motion, creeping along the carpet toward a wardrobe that stood against the wall by the fireplace. I sprang off the bed and pursued it. Evidently, the finger was alarmed, for it redoubled its pace, reached the wardrobe, and went under it. By the time I had arrived at the article of furniture, it had disappeared. I lit a Vesta match and held it beneath the wardrobe, that was raised above the carpet by about 2 inches on turned feet, but I could see nothing more of the finger. I got my umbrella and thrust it beneath, and raked it forward and backward, right and left, and raked out flue and nothing more solid. Chapter 2. I packed my portmanteau the next day and returned to my home at the country. All desire for amusement in town was gone, and the faculty to transact business had departed as well. A languor and qualms had come over me, and my head was in a maze. I was unable to fix my thoughts on anything. At times I was disposed to believe that my wits were deserting me, at others that I was on the verge of a severe illness. Anyhow, whether likely to go off my head or not, or take to my bed, home was the only place for me, and homeward I sped accordingly. On reaching my country habitation, my servant, as usual, took my portmanteau to my bedroom and unstrapped it, but did not unpack it. I object to his throwing out the contents of my Gladstone bag. Not that there is anything in it he may not see, but that he puts my things where I cannot find them. Again. My clothes, he is welcome to place them where he likes and where they belong, and this latter he knows better than I do. But then I carry about with me the other things that a dress suit, and changes of linen and flannel. There are letters, papers, books, and the proper destinations of these are known only to myself. A servant has a singular and evil knack of putting away literary matter and odd volumes in such places that it takes the owner half a day to find them again. Although I was uncomfortable and my head in a whirl, I opened and unpacked my own portmanteau. As I was thus engaged, I saw something curled up in my collar box, the lid of which had got broken in by a boot heel impinging on it. I had pulled off the damaged cover to see my collars had been spoiled, when something curled up inside suddenly rose on end and leapt, just like a cheese jumper, out of the box, over the edge of the Gladstone bag, and scurried away across the floor in a manner already familiar to me. I could not doubt for a moment what it was. Here was the finger again. It had come with me from London to the country. Whither it went in its run over the floor I do not know. I was too bewildered to observe. Somewhat later, towards evening, I seated myself in my easy chair, took up a book, and tried to read. I was tired out by the journey, with the knocking about in town, and with the discomfort and alarm produced by the apparition of the finger. I felt worn out. I was unable to give my attention to what I could read, and before I was aware, I was asleep. Roused for an instant before the fall of the book from my hands, I speedily relapsed into unconsciousness. I'm not sure that a doze in an armchair ever does good. It usually leaves me in a semi-stupid condition and with a headache. 5 minutes in a horizontal position on my bed is worth 30 in a chair. That is my experience. And sleeping in a sedentary position, the head is a difficulty. It drops forward or lolls to one side or the other, and has to be brought back into a position in which the line to the center of gravity runs through the trunk. Otherwise, the head carries the body over in a sort of general capsize out of the chair and onto the floor. I slept, on the occasion of which I am speaking, pretty heartily, because deadly weary. But I was brought to waking, not by my head falling over the arm of the chair and my trunk tumbling after it, but by a feeling of cold extending from my throat to my heart. When I awoke, I was in a diagonal position, with my right ear resting on my right shoulder and exposing the left side of my throat, and it was here, where the jugular vein throbs, I felt the greatest intensity of cold. At once I shrugged my left shoulder, rubbing my neck with the collar of my coat. In so doing, immediately something fell off, upon the floor, and again I saw the finger. My disgust, horror were intensified when I perceived that it was dragging something after it, which might have been an old stocking, and which I took at first glance for something of the sort. The evening sun shone in through my window in a brilliant golden ray that lighted the object as it scrambled along. With this illumination, I was able to distinguish what the object was. It is not easy to describe it, but I will make the attempt. The finger I saw was solid and material. What it drew after it was neither, or was in a nebulous protoplasmic condition. The finger was attached to a hand that was curdling into matter and in process of acquiring solidity. Attached to the hand was an arm in a very filmy condition, and this arm belonged to a human body in a still more vaporous, immaterial condition. This was being dragged along the floor by the finger, just as a silkworm might pull after it the tangle of its web. I could see legs and arms and head and coat-tail tumbling about and interlacing and disentangling again in a promiscuous manner. There was no bone nor muscle nor substance in the finger. The members were attached to the trunk, which was spineless, but had evidently no functions, and were wholly dependent on the finger which pulled them along in a jumble of parts as it advanced. In such confusion did the whole vaporous matter seem, that I cannot say for certain it was so, but the impression left on my mind was that one of the eyeballs was looking out at a nostril, and the tongue lolling out one of the ears. It was, however, only for a moment that I saw this germ body. I cannot call by another name that which had not more substance than smoke. I saw it only so long as it was being dragged athwart by the ray of sunlight. The moment it was pulled jerkily out of the beam into the shadow beyond, I could see nothing of it, only the crawling finger. I had not sufficient moral energy or physical force in me to rise, pursue, and stamp on the finger, and grind it with my heel into the floor. Both seemed drained out of me. What became of the finger, where it went, how it managed to secrete itself, I do not know. I had lost the power to inquire. I sat in my chair, chilled, staring before me into space. "Please, sir," a voice said, "there's Mr. Square below, electrical engineer." "Eh?" I looked dreamily around. My valet was at the door. "Please, sir, the gentleman would be glad to be allowed to go over the house and see that all the electrical apparatus is in order." "Oh, indeed, yes. Show him up." Chapter 3. I had recently placed the lighting of my house in the hands of an electrical engineer, a very intelligent man, Mr. Square, for whom I had contracted a sincere friendship. He had built a shed with a dynamo out of sight, and had entrusted the laying of the wires to subordinates, as he had been busy with other orders and could not personally watch every detail. But he was not the man to let anything pass unobserved, and he knew that electricity was not a force to be played with. Bad or careless workmen will often insufficiently protect the wires, or neglect the insertion of the lead which serves as a safety valve in the event of the current being too strong. Houses may be set on fire, human beings fatally shocked by the neglect of a bad or slovenly workman. The apparatus for my mansion was but just completed, and Mr. Square had come to inspect it and make sure that all was right. He was an enthusiast in the matter of electricity, and saw for it a vast perspective, the limits of which could not be predicted. All forces, said he, are correlated. When you have force in one form, you may just turn it into this or that as you like. In one form it is motive power, in another it is light, in another heat. Now we have electricity for illumination. We employ it, but not as freely as in the States for propelling vehicles. Why should we have horses drawing our buses? We should use only electric trams. Why do we burn coal to warm our shins? There is electricity which throws out no filthy smoke as does coal. Why should we let the tides waste their energies in the Thames, in other estuaries? There we have nature supplying us, free, gratis, and for nothing, with all the force we want for propelling, for heating, for lighting. I will tell you something more, my dear sir, said Mr. Square. I have mentioned but 3 modes of force, and have instanced but a limited number of uses to which electricity must be turned. How is it with photography? Is not electric light becoming an artistic agent? I bet you, said he, before long it will become a therapeutic agent as well. Oh yes, I have heard of certain impostors with their life belts. Mr. Square did not relish this little dig I gave him. He winced, but returned to the charge. We don't know how to direct it, all right? That is all, said he. I haven't taken the matter up, but others will, I bet, and we shall have electricity used as freely now as we use powders and pills. I don't believe in doctor's stuff myself. I hold that disease lays hold of a man because he lacks physical force to resist it. Now, is it not obvious that you are beginning at the wrong end when you attack the disease? What you want is to supply force, make up for the lack of physical power, and force is force wherever you find it, here motive, there illuminating, and so on. I don't see why a physician should not utilize the tide rushing out under London Bridge for restoring the feeble vigor of all who are languid and a prey to disorder in the metropolis. It will come to that, I bet, and that is not all. Force is force everywhere. Political, moral force, physical force, dynamic force, heat, light, tidal waves, and so on. All are one, all is one. In time we shall know how to galvanize into aptitude and moral energy all the limp and crooked consciences and wills that need taking in hard, and such there will always be in modern civilization. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how it will be done. But in the future the priest as well as the doctor will turn electricity on as his principal, nay, his only agent. And he can get his force anywhere, out of the running stream, out of the wind, out of the tidal wave. I'll give you an instance, continued Mr. Square, chuckling and rubbing his hands, to show you the great possibilities in electricity used in a crude fashion. In a certain great city away far west in the States, a go-ahead place, too, more so than New York, they had electric trams all up and down along the roads to everywhere. The union men working for the company demanded that the non-unionists should be turned off, but the company didn't see it. Instead, it turned off the union men. It had up its sleeve a sufficiency of the others and filled all places at once. Union men didn't like it, and passed word that at a given hour on a certain day, every wire was to be cut. The company knew this by means of its spies and turned on, ready for them, 3 times the power into the wires. At the fixed moment, up the poles went the strikers to cut the cables, and down they came a dozen times quicker than they went up, I bet. Then there came wires to the hospitals from all quarters for stretchers to carry off the disabled men, some with broken legs, arms, ribs. 2 or 3 had their necks broken. I reckon the company was wonderfully merciful. It didn't put on sufficient force to make cinders of them then and there. Possibly opinion might not have liked it. Stop the Strike did that. Great moral effect, all done by electricity. In this manner, Mr. Square was wont to rattle on. He interested me, and I came to think that there might be something in what he said, that his suggestions were not mere nonsense. I was glad to see Mr. Square enter my room, shown in by my man. I did not rise from my chair to shake his hand, for I had not sufficient energy to do so. In a languid tone, I welcomed him, and signed him to take a seat. Mr. Square looked at me with some surprise. "Why, what's the matter?" he said. "You seem unwell. Not got the flu, have you?" "I beg your pardon." "The influenza. Every third person is crying out he has it, and the sale of eucalyptus is enormous. Not that eucalyptus is any good. Influenza microbes, indeed. What care they for eucalyptus? You've gone down some steps of the ladders of life since I saw you last, Squire. How did you account for that?" I hesitated about mentioning the extraordinary circumstances that had occurred, but Square was a man who would not allow any beating around the bush. He was downright and straight, and in 10 minutes had got the entire story out of me. "Rather boisterous for your nerves, that, a crawling finger," said he. "It's a queer story, taken on end." Then he was silent, considering. After a few minutes, he rose and said, "I'll go and look at the fittings, and then I'll turn this little matter of yours over again, and see if I can't knock the bottom of it. I'm kinder fond of these things." Mr. Square was not a Yankee, but he had lived for some time in America and affected to speak like an American. He used expressions, terms of speech common in the States, but had none of the transatlantic twang. He was a man absolutely without affection in every other particular. This was his sole weakness, and it was harmless. The man was so thorough in all he did that I did not expect his return immediately. He was certain to examine every portion of the dynamo engine and all the connections and burners. This would necessarily engage him for some hours. As the day was nearly done, I knew he could not accomplish what he wanted that evening, and accordingly gave orders that a room should be prepared for him. Then, as my head was full of pain and my skin was burning, I told my servant to apologize for my absence from dinner, and tell Mr. Square that I was really forced to return to my bed by sickness, and that I believed I was about to be prostrated by an attack of influenza. The valet, a worthy fellow who has been with me for 6 years, was concerned by my appearance, and urged me to allow him to send for a doctor. I had no confidence in the local practitioner, and if I sent for another from the nearest town, I should offend him, and a row would perhaps ensue. So I declined. If I were really in it for an influenza attack, I knew about as much as any doctor how to deal with it. Quinine, that was all. I bade my man light a small lamp, lower it so as to give sufficient illumination to enable me to find some lime juice at my bedhead, and my pocket handkerchief, and to be able to read my watch. When he had done this, I bade him leave me. I lay in bed, burning, racked with pain in my head and my eyeballs on fire. Whether I fell asleep or went off my head for a while, I cannot tell. I may have fainted. I have no recollection of anything after having gone to bed and taken a sip of lime juice that tasted to me like soap, till I was roused by a sense of pain in my ribs, a slow, gnawing, torturing pain, waxing momentarily more intense. In half-consciousness, I was partly dreaming and partly aware of actual suffering. The pain was real, but in my fancy I thought that a great maggot was working its way into my side between my ribs. I seemed to see it. It twisted itself half round, then reverted to its former position, and again twisted itself, moving like a bradawl, not like a gimlet, which latter forms a complete revolution. This obviously must have been a dream, hallucination only, as I was lying on my back and my eyes were directed toward the bottom of the bed, and the coverlet and blankets and sheets intervened between my eyes and my side. But in fever one sees without eyes, and in every direction, and through all obstructions. Roused thoroughly by an excruciating twinge, I tried to cry out, and succeeded in throwing myself over on my right side, that which was in pain. At once I felt the thing withdrawn that was awling, if I may use the word, in between my ribs. and now I saw, standing beside the bed, a figure that had its arms under the bedclothes and was slowly removing it. The hand was leisurely drawn from under the coverings and rested on the eider-down coverlet, with the forefinger extended. The figure was that of a man in shabby clothes, with a sallow, mean face, a retreating forehead, with hair cut after the French fashion, and a moustache dark. The jaws and chin were covered with a bristly growth, as if shaving had been neglected for a fortnight. The figure did not appear to be thoroughly solid, but to be of the consistency of curd, and the face was of the complexion of curd. As I looked at this object, it withdrew, sliding backward in an odd sort of manner, and as though overweighted by the hand, which was the most substantial, indeed the only substantial portion of it. Though the figure retreated, stooping, yet was no longer huddled along by the finger, as if it had no material existence. If the same, it had acquired a consistency and a solidity which it did not possess before. How it vanished, I do not know, nor whither it went. The door opened, and Square came in. "What?" he exclaimed with cheery voice. "Influenza, is it?" "I don't know. I think it's that finger again." "Now look here," said Square. "I'm not going to have that cuss at its pranks any more. Tell me all about it." I was now so exhausted, so feeble, that I was not able to give a connected account of what had taken place. But Square put to me just a few pointed questions and elicited the main facts. He pieced them together in his own orderly mind so as to form a connected whole. "There is a feature in the case," said he, "that strikes me as remarkable and important. At first, a finger only, then a hand, then a nebulous figure attached to the hand, without backbone, without consistency. Lastly, a complete form, with consistency and with backbone, but the latter in a gelatinous condition, and the entire figure overweighting by the hand, just as hand and figure were previously overweighted by the finger. Simultaneously, with this compacting and consolidating of the figure, came your degeneration and loss of vital force, and, in a word, of health. What you lose, that object acquires, and what it acquires, it gains by contact with you. That's clear enough, is it not?" "I dare say. I don't know. I can't think." "I suppose not. The faculty of thought is drained out of you. Very well, I must think for you, and I will. Force is force, and see if I can't deal with your visitant in such a way as will prove just as truly and morally dissuasive as that employed on the Union men on strike. Never mind where it was. That's not the point." "Will you kindly give me some lime juice?" I entreated. I sipped the acid draught without relief. I listened to Square, but without hope. I wanted to be left alone. I was weary of my pain, weary of everything, even of life. It was a matter of indifference to me whether I recovered or slipped out of existence. "It will be here again shortly," said the engineer. "As the French say, l'appétit vient en mangeant. It has been at you thrice. It won't be content without another peck. And if it does get another, I guess it will pretty well about finish you." Mr. Square rubbed his chin, then put his hands into his trouser pockets. That was also a trick acquired in the States, an inelegant one. His hands, when not actively occupied, went into his pockets. Inevitably, they gravitated thither. Ladies did not like Square. They said he was not a gentleman. But it was not that he said or did anything off color. Only he spoke to them, looked at them, walked with them, always with his hands in his pockets. I have seen a lady turn her back on him deliberately because of this trick. Standing now with his hands in his pockets, he studied my bed and said contemptuously, "Old-fashioned and bad, four-poster. Oughtn't to be allowed, I guess, unwholesome all the way round." I was not in a condition to dispute this. I like a four-poster with curtains at head and feet, not that I ever draw them, but it gives a sense of privacy that is wanting in one of your half-tester beds. If there is a window at one's feet, one can lie in bed without glare in one's eyes, and yet without darkening the room by drawing the blinds. There is much to be said for a four-poster, but this is not the place in which to say it. Mr. Square pulled his hands out of his pockets and began fiddling with the electric point near the end of my bed. attached a wire, swept it in a semicircle along the floor, then thrust the knob at the end into my hand in the bed. Keep your eye open, said he, and by your hand shut and covered. If that finger comes again tickling your ribs, try it with the point. I'll manage the switch from behind the curtain. Then he disappeared. I was too indifferent in my misery to turn my head and observe where he was. I remained inert, with the knob in my hand and my eyes closed, suffering and thinking of nothing but the shooting pains through my head and the aches in my loins and back and legs. Some time probably elapsed before I felt the finger again at work in my ribs. I groped, but no longer bored. It groped, but no longer bored. I now felt the entire hand, not a single finger, and the hand was substantial, cold, and clammy. I was aware how, I know not, that if the finger point reached the region of my heart on the left side, the hand would, so to speak, sit down on it, with the cold palm over it, and then that immediately my heart would cease to beat, and it would be, as Square might express, gone coon with me. In self-preservation, I thought about the knob of the electric wire against my hand, against one of the ringers, I think, and at once was aware of a rapping, squealing noise. I turned my head languidly, and saw the form, now more substantial than before, capering in an ecstasy of pain, endeavoring fruitlessly to withdraw its arm from under the bedclothes, and the hand from the electric point. At the same moment, Square stepped from behind the curtain with a dry laugh and said, "I thought we should fix him. He has the coil about him and can't escape. Now let us drop to particulars. But I shan't let you off until I know all about you." The last sentence was addressed not to me, but to the apparition. Thereupon he bade me take the point away from the hand of the figure, being whatever it was, but to be ready with it at a moment's notice. He then proceeded to catechize my visitor, who moved restlessly within the circle of wire but could not escape from it. It replied in a thin, squealing voice that sounded as if it came from a distance, and had a querulous tone in it. I do not pretend to give all that was said. I cannot recollect everything that passed. My memory was affected by my illness, as well as my body. Yet I prefer giving the scraps that I recollect to what Square told me he had heard. "Yes, I was unsuccessful, always was. Nothing answered with me. The world was against me, society was. I hate society. I don't like work neither, never did. But I like agitating against what is established. I hate the royal family, the landed interest, the parsons, everything that is, except the people, that is, the unemployed. I always did. I couldn't get work as suited me. When I died, they buried me in a cheap coffin, dirt cheap, and gave me a nasty grave, cheap, and a service rattled away, cheap, and no monument. Didn't want none. Oh, there are lots of us, all discontented. Discontent! That's a passion, it is. It gets into the veins, it fills the brain, it occupies the heart. It is a sort of divine cancer that takes possession of the entire man and makes him dissatisfied with everything, and hate everybody. But we must have our share of happiness at some time. We all crave for it one way or another. Some think there's a future state of blessedness and so have hope and look to attain it. For hope is a cable, an anchor that attaches to what is real. But when you have no hope of that sort, I don't believe in any future state. You must look for happiness in life here. We didn't get it when we were alive, so we seek to procure it after we are dead. We can do it if we get out of our cheap and nasty coffins, but not till the greater part of us is mouldered away. If a finger or two remains, that can work its way up to the surface. Those cheap deal coffins go to pieces quick enough. Then the only solid part of us left can pull the rest of us that has gone to nothing after it. Then we grope about after the living. The well-to-do if we can get at them. The honest working poor if we can't. We hate them too because they are content and happy. If we reach any of these and can touch them, then we can draw their vital force out of them into ourselves and recuperate at their expense. That was about what I was going to do with you. Getting on famous, nearly solidified into a new man and given another chance in life. But I've missed it this time. Just my luck. As everything, always have, except misery and disappointment. Get plenty of that. What are you all? Asked Square, Anarchists out of employ? Some of us go by that name, some by other designations, but we are all one, and own allegiance to one monarch, sovereign discontent. We are bred to have a distaste for manual work, and we grow up loafers, grumbling at everything and quarreling with society that is around us and the providence that is above us. And what do you call yourselves now? Call ourselves? Nothing. We are the same in another condition, that is all. Folk called us at once anarchists, nihilists, socialists, levelers. Now they call us the influenza. The learned talk of microbes and bacilli and bacteria. Microbes, bacilli, and bacteria, we blowed. We are the influenza. We, the social failures, the generally discontented, coming up out of our cheap and nasty graves in the form of physical disease. We are the influenza. There you are, I guess, exclaimed Square triumphantly. Did I not say that all forces were correlated? If so, then all negations, deficiencies of force are one in their several manifestations. Talk of divine discontent as a force impelling to progress. Rubbish! It is a paralysis of energy. It turns all it absorbs to acid, to envy, spite, gall. It inspires nothing, but rots the whole moral system. Here you have it. Moral, social, political discontent in another form, nay, aspect, that is all. What anarchism is in the body politic, that influenza is in the body physical. Do you see that? Yes, I believe I answered, and dropped away into the land of dreams. I recovered. What Square did with the thing I know not, but believe he reduced it again to its former negative and self-decomposing condition. The end.